It's just heartbreaking. It's just so heartbreaking.
Everyone is trying to make sense of the senselessness of what happened in Southport. The hope that finding out what actually happened brings you closer to the why and helps you start to process it all.
I've got a daughter of my own, and it's just made me, I don't know what to say. Poor children.
But there are also those who are weaponising the trauma and the anger. Those who decided they knew what happened before anyone else. Spread false information designed to reinforce a world view, not foster understanding. Hours after the stabbing, false information online named the attacker and started getting traction. An X account called Artemis for Now was, as far as we can tell, one of the first accounts to publish the false information that the attacker's name was Ali al-Shakati and that he was an asylum seeker that arrived by boat. Merseyside police have confirmed that this is not true.
I have to say, you are amazing in terms of especially your Twitter feed.
People are forced to live. And
Artemis for Now is the account of Bernadette Spofford, a businesswoman living near Chester. She became famous as an anti-lockdown influencer and commentator during COVID, has nearly 50,000 followers on X. She subsequently deleted her post about Southport. We tried to contact her today. She did not return our calls. After Artemis, then, how does it become amplified?
So the name is then amplified by a number of accounts, but the most influential was an account called Channel 3 Now News, right? So Channel 3 Now News is not a real news site. It's a fake news site masquerading as a real one. They amplified this and they got loads of retweets.
Channel 3 Now have taken down the article and posted an apology. The giants of disinfluence also pitched in, stirring tensions. Andrew Tate, Tommy Robinson. So where was most of the traffic coming from? Analysis of posts on X in the last week mentioning the words Southport and Muslim show nearly half of them are from accounts based in the United States, followed by just under a third coming out of the UK.
It's important to sort of acknowledge the fact that this tragedy in Southport is going to be used to try and, especially ahead of the US election, to try and, promote reactionary politics.
No one came from the States, though, yesterday to riot in Southport. There were members of fascist groups like Patriotic Alternative in attendance, but there were also local people involved. Disinformation only really works where there's distrust. The antidote to that, resilient communities. It's harder to be resilient, though, when you're traumatised.
Warwick O'Brien reporting. Now, protesters have thrown flares at the gates of Downing Street and a statue of Winston Churchill. A few hundred people have gathered there following a call by the former actor Lawrence Fox for a peaceful demonstration after the murders and riots in Southport. The protesters have also been shouting abuse at police and nearby pro-Ukrainian demonstrators, as well as chanting, "Save our kids and stop the boats." Well, Amelia Jen is there live for us now. Amelia.
We're behind the police cordon now. Just before you came to us, someone threw a glass bottle behind them. But just before 7, actually, it seemed relatively peaceful. The Met had arranged public order conditions with the protesters. They were supposed to stay within an agreed perimeter. But then shortly after 7, they broke out of that. They started throwing flares, and then a considerable group of them ran down to Parliament Square to the Churchill statue. They then ran back again, and that's when the scuffles broke out. Protesters throwing the railings towards officers, throwing drinks at them. And actually, we had to come back behind the cordon because someone threatened to knock over the camera. There are several hundred people here. They've been chanting, "Save our kids." They've been chanting, "We want our country back." And we saw a couple of men wearing T-shirts with pictures of the 3 little girls who lost their lives in Southport. As I say, yeah, a couple of people, so a couple of hundred people behind me, and they don't look like they're going anywhere soon. They are supposed to disperse by 8:30, but we'll see whether or not that happens.
Thank you very much for that update, Amelia. Well, Brendan Cox was married to the Labour MP Jo Cox, who was murdered by a far-right attacker in 2016. He co-founded the Together Coalition, which aims to build stronger communities, and he joins me now. Brendan Cox, thank you very much for joining us. Just wanted to start with what we've just seen from Amelia there, those scenes in Westminster, which follow on from the scenes that we saw in Southport. What do you make of that?
I think the whole experience is incredibly depressing. What should be a focus on the three girls who died, on Elsie, on Alice, and on Bibi, is instead being taken up by these thugs. That space is being taken by these thugs who aren't interested in justice. They're not interested in the family's grief. The families today, Elsie's mother had to ask them to stop this violence when she should be in the middle of her grieving process. She had to interrupt that to ask these thugs to stop doing what they're doing. So these people aren't interested in those families. They are using this awful tragedy, this awful and horrific crime to drive hatred against minority communities in the UK. They don't care which minority. Maybe it's asylum seekers, maybe it's refugees, maybe it's Muslims. They don't care. What they do care about is their own agenda, their own hatred, and an opportunity to try and have a fight with the police.
What we have seen, and we saw that in Porrick's report as well, is the rapid spread of online disinformation. Have you been surprised by how quickly that's been able to spread, how quickly these groups are managing to organise, not just in Southport outside the mosque, but outside Downing Street as well?
I'm not surprised by the speed with which it's happened. What I am surprised about is how relatively, and I use the term advisably, but relatively mainstream people like Nigel Farage, for example, have added to this and have gone far beyond asking questions, which obviously you're entitled to do, but have started to insinuate, to spread disinformation, to spread lies, to ask leading questions about whether this person was on a terrorist watch list, to use sort of Trumpian phrases like people are saying. And it's that which I think has tipped this over into something beyond the margins, where larger numbers of people are taking part. And those people should pay a price for their responsibility in helping to stoke these tensions and helping to stoke this violence.
Is that where you lay the blame then? Because earlier you said that Nigel Farage is nothing better than Tommy Robinson in a suit. He has said in response that it's quite legitimate to ask questions and has put the blame on, or he sees the blame, partly on the police.
Let's be clear where the blame lies. The blame lies on the people who picked up bricks and threw them at innocent people, who threw them at mosques, who launched a pogrom against a mosque that had nothing to do with this. As far as we know, and again, none of us know everything at this stage, but as far as we know, there's no Islamist-inspired connection to this whatsoever. But even if there were, attacking a random mosque that happens to be close to the site has nothing to do with that. So those are the people that are responsible, those thugs. But the other people that are responsible are those who have egged them on, who have encouraged them, who have spread disinformation and misinformation. And that includes people like Nigel Farage, and it includes people like Tommy Robinson and all the rest. But Nigel Farage is now an elected member of Parliament. With that comes responsibility. He has sullied his responsibility, he's sullied his office, and he should be held responsible by Parliament for that.
Brendan, I just have to ask you, ultimately, at the heart of this are families, as you said, dealing with unimaginable heartbreak and grief over these three little girls. What would be your message to them right now?
It's very hard to answer that question, other than, you know, your neighbours, the vast majority of people in Southport, the vast majority of people in the country are thinking of you, are sending you their love, and we won't let the actions of this tiny minority ruin what is an outpouring of love and support for you in your most horrific times. And I guess from somebody that's gone through some of that grieving process with kids involved, just to say to take your time to take things slowly, and to cherish those that you've lost.